Howdy! In this mini lecture, we will discuss new renewable energy alternatives to fossil fuels. Specifically, we will discuss solar power and wind power. The student learning objectives of this mini lecture are outline the major sources of renewable energy, summarize their benefits, and assess the barriers to their growth, describe solar energy and the ways it is harnessed and evaluate its advantages and disadvantages, distinguish between net metering and feed-in tariffs, and describe wind power and how we harness it and evaluate its benefits and drawbacks. As was mentioned before in the mini lecture on conventional energy alternatives, there are many reasons to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy alternatives. However, we can't switch to renewables overnight. There are still some technology and economic barriers to some renewable energy sources. The greatest hurdle, however, is politics. Conventional sources of energy, such as oil and gas, receive more government subsidies and tax breaks than renewable energy alternatives. Specifically, the oil and gas industry receives 75 times more subsidies than new renewable energy sources. Nuclear energy receives 31 times more subsidies than new renewable energy sources. This isn't all that surprising considering oil, gas, and nuclear have been the main sources of energy in our nation for many decades. However, these policies of supporting non-renewable energy sources while shortchanging renewable sources keep fossil fuels cheap and inhibits development of renewable energy sources. We will begin our examination of new renewable energy alternatives by first looking at solar energy. Solar energy is quite simply the energy from the sun. Here are some interesting statistics regarding solar energy. Each day, the Earth receives enough solar energy to power human energy consumption for a quarter of a century. Each square meter of Earth receives 17 times the energy of a light bulb. And typical homes have enough roof area to meet all their power needs with rooftop solar energy panels. The reason we have yet to take advantage of this renewable energy source fully is because we lack effective and cost-efficient technology to capture and use the sun's energy. There are two ways by which we collect solar energy: passive solar energy collection and active solar energy collection. Passive solar energy is when buildings are designed to maximize absorption of sunlight in winter and minimize absorption of sunlight in the summer so as to keep the home cool. Homes and buildings designed for passive solar energy collection usually have low, south-facing windows that capture the energy from the winter sun. These buildings also have overhangs on windows blocking summer light. Buildings which utilize passive solar techniques also use thermal mass, which are materials that absorb, store, and release heat in floors, roofs, and walls. Concrete, straw, and brick are good examples of thermal mass. Homes with passive solar energy techniques incorporated into them also usually have landscaping specifically designed to provide shade and wind protection as an additional means of regulating the temperature naturally. A key thing to keep in mind with passive solar is that it does not use any device or system to collect, focus, store, or transmit solar energy. Passive solar energy is not a new concept by any means. Some ancient Native Americans were known as cliff dwellers because they built elaborate and sophisticated villages in the side of cliffs. These ancient dwellings were designed to minimize the heat that comes in during the summer from the sun, while maximizing the heat that is absorbed during the winter. In contrast to passive solar energy collection, active solar energy collection uses technology to focus, move, or store solar energy. The most common technology used in active solar energy collection is a flat plate solar collector. Flat plate solar collectors are dark-colored, heat-absorbing metal plates mounted on rooftops. Water, air, or antifreeze runs through these collectors, transferring heat throughout the building. Heated water is stored and used later or can be passed through pipes to heat the building. Over 200 million households or businesses worldwide heat water with solar collectors, but only 1.5 million of these are in the U.S. Most of the U.S. sites are outdoor swimming pools. Another active solar collection system is a photovoltaic cell or PV cell. PV cells convert sunlight directly into electrical energy. Small PV cells are in watches and calculators. However, the PV cells can also be arranged in modules on roofs. There are some variations of PV technology. Most notable are thin film solar cells. These are photovoltaic materials compressed into thin sheets. These cells are lighter, less bulky, and cheaper, but are far less efficient. Thin film solar cells can be incorporated into roofing shingles, roads, and other surfaces such as highways. Technology is continually advancing, so many people view thin film solar cells as a promising technology for the future. Another benefit of capturing your own energy is that in some places, producers of PV electricity can sell their power to a utility company. In parts of 46 U.S. states, homeowners can sell the power they harness through renewable sources to the utility company. This process is called net metering, and it means that the value of the power the consumer provides is subtracted from their monthly utility bill. A similar system is called feed-in tariffs and is when utility companies pay individual producers of power more than the market price of power so power producers turn a profit on their solar panels or other technology they use to collect energy. Germany is a leader in the idea of feed-in tariffs. In stark contrast to Germany's policy of feed-in tariffs, the state of Oklahoma passed a bill in April of 2014 that would charge Oklahoma residents an additional fee if they produce their own energy through solar panel or wind turbines on their property. I've provided you a link to an article that describes this law in the transcript and an e-campus if you're interested in reading more about this policy. Another way we harness the sun's energy is through concentrated solar power, or CSP. CSP utilizes technologies to concentrate solar energy to generate electricity. There are a variety of ways this can be done, but essentially mirrors concentrate solar power to a central point. At solar power plants that use CSP, mirrors concentrate the solar power to a tall power tower, as can be seen in the top left-hand photo. At CSP plants, mirrors swivel to track sun's movement. The power towers then heat air or fluids to run a steam-driven generator. Smaller versions of this can be used to cook food, as can be seen in the top right-hand photo and bottom photo. You can make your own solar oven for camping or emergency situations. If you're interested in making one of these, I provided a link in eCampus. However, a Google search for DIY solar oven will yield many other websites with similar information. While there are many benefits of solar power, we must weigh these against the downsides as well. The advantages of solar power are that it's an inexhaustible energy source. Solar technologies use no fuels, are quiet, are safe, contain no moving parts, and require little maintenance. Solar panels allow local, decentralized control over energy, enabling people to live off the grid, and in some cases, people can take advantage of net metering or feed-in tariffs. Solar energy can be especially helpful in developing nations. In homes of individuals in developing countries, their energy demands are often small enough that a simple solar panel supplies all the power they need. Off of simple solar panels, which local women are trained to build and maintain. I've provided a link to a story featuring a model village in India that achieved this feat. Another benefit is that green-collar jobs are being created as this industry grows. And finally, solar panels do not emit greenhouse gases and air pollution when up and running. There are three main disadvantages of solar panels. Number one, solar radiation varies geographically, and some areas are just not sunny enough to make the solar panels worthwhile. Two, solar power is intermittent. Daily and seasonal variation also poses problems. To overcome the problem of solar power being intermittent, we need to store and back up power, and current batteries may not be sufficient to supply the energy needs when the sun is not available. Finally, there are technology limitations. Currently, solar power is the most expensive source of electricity, but prices have dropped and efficiency has increased. The technology limitations can be attributed to lack of investment. On the bright side, though, solar energy has grown by 30% worldwide annually the past 40 years. Furthermore, solar energy use could increase as prices fall due to improving technology and if governments provided incentives such as Germany's feed-in tariff system. Moving on to the second type of new renewable energy, wind energy. Wind energy is energy derived from movement of air. Wind turbines are used to harness wind energy. Wind turbines are devices that convert wind's kinetic energy into electric energy. You may have seen a field of wind turbines before. There are several in West Texas. These fields are referred to as wind farms and may contain hundreds of turbines. Wind is the fastest growing energy sector. 5 nations produce 75% of the world's wind power. In order, these nations are China, the US, Germany, Spain, and India. While these are the leading countries producing wind power, there are dozens of other nations that have started harnessing the power of wind. Although China produces the most wind power, Denmark actually is the leading nation in the proportion of electricity generated from wind. In the US, Texas generates the most wind power of all the states. Wind research experts released a report in 2008 that outlined how the US can meet 20% of the electrical needs of the entire US by 2030 using wind alone. More and more wind farms are being developed offshore because wind speeds are 20% greater over open water than they are over land. While the costs to erect and maintain turbines in water are higher compared to land, the offshore wind farms produce more power and are therefore more profitable. Currently, there are no offshore wind farms in the U.S. However, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, one is in the works for off the coast of Rhode Island. As of July 2015, the foundation was in place and the plans are to install 5 turbines for a total of 30 megawatts of power generation capacity. According to the EIA, the wind farm will be online in 2016 in the U.S. Another wind farm is planned for construction off the coast of Cape Cod in Massachusetts. The wind farm in Cape Cod would include 130 wind turbines for a total capacity of 468 megawatts. As with all things, wind power has its advantages and disadvantages. Let's begin with the advantages. Wind produces no emissions once installed and prevents emissions. It is more efficient than conventional power sources. The EROI of wind is about 23 to 1. Compared to oil, which is about 11 to 1, wind is more efficient. Turbines use less water than conventional power plants. Local areas can become more self-sufficient. Farmers and ranchers can produce extra revenue for themselves by leasing their land to a wind farm. The farmers can continue to use their land for other purposes because wind turbines take up a relatively small footprint and the land around the turbines remains unaffected. Technology is also reducing the cost of wind farm construction, and wind power creates jobs. 85,000 people now work in the wind industry in the U.S. Globally, there are 700,000 employed by this industry. The downsides of wind energy are that wind varies from time to time and place to place. In the U.S., the coast, mountainous regions, and Tornado Alley, for example, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, and North Dakota, are the places with the highest average wind speeds. Wind sources are not always near population centers that need energy, so transmission networks need to be expanded. Some local residents often oppose them for aesthetic reasons. The common phrase you'll hear in this regard is NIMBY, which stands for Not in My Backyard. Finally, there is some concern that the turbines threaten birds and bats, which are killed when they fly into rotating blades. There is, however, uncertainty regarding the severity of bird and bat deaths caused by wind turbines. Some research suggests that other man-made threats such as glass windows pose a great risk to birds and bats. The solution to this problem could be to build turbines away from migratory flyways and critical habitats. That concludes this mini lecture on new renewable energy alternatives. Please review the weekly outline and complete the activities for this week per the schedule set forth in the outline. Thanks and gig 'em!